Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have a fellow life coach and colleague here I was about to say in the studio, but it's on Zoom. Kate Bixler is a weight loss coach, and Kate was married 13 years and has now been repartnered 13 years. And Kate is here to tell us her divorce story and how she, went from uh, being married 13 years, a whole journey to
Mm.
being partnered now. Welcome, Kate. Please introduce yourself, tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Hey, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Like you said, 13, 13, lucky 13. I was married almost 13 years and moved around a bit, had three children, um, kind of followed that expected path. Um, job,
Sure.
wedding, following the direction that um, I felt like was laid before me, following my own plans. And then when I was married almost 13 years, um, I wanted to get divorced. It was a big struggle. There was a lot of shame involved.
Mm.
I felt like we were still good friends, but I felt like the connection wasn't just what I needed in my life. And I was starting to question other things
Mhm.
um, about myself.
Yeah, specifically, you consider yourself that you were straight at that
Yes.
time, and
I,
now you're not straight.
no, I'm not. I am in a partnership with a woman, and I know some people do not have the same view, and it's very individual for each person, right? Even my partner doesn't consider, she was also married to a man before, but she did not consider that she was straight and now she's not. She considered herself a ways that she was gay, but didn't want to admit it to herself.
Mhm.
And she had a very different journey than I did. Um,
Is that
w-
the reason you wanted a divorce? Because I think you initiated the divorce.
I did. Um,
Or were there other reasons?
I would say that was the biggie.
Okay.
That was probably the main thing, but there were things about our connection that I just felt like I was in a place where I had been happy. We had a good partnership. We were great as parents together. We had a family that I loved. Um, but it just didn't feel like it was for me or what I needed anymore. So I had family members who had a lot of difficulty with the idea of divorce. I remember very specifically my dad, who I was always very close to, just felt like, no, this can't happen. Like, your role as a wife is to stay married and to have this marriage last forever. And as I tried to explain to him, he was feeling like you can't have a failed marriage. And I really felt
Mm.
like, no, it was a successful marriage. And now it's a done marriage. I'm
Right.
just in a different place. And I felt like his role was to try and figure out a way to accept it. But so it was a journey dealing with it
When
with
was the first
him.
time, like you said, you were married 13 years. So when was the first time you had an inkling that I don't want to do this anymore? I don't want to be here, or something's changing. How long did you
Yeah.
go? Did you, I guess, think about it, or, sit
Yeah.
on it?
So, I mean, I had inklings that I maybe had a little bit of curiosity that way when I was married, maybe just curiosity about the physical part of that, but I never thought that emotionally that's where I belonged. When I thought about other same-sex couples, I always felt like that's great for them, but that's not for me. Um, and then I I was working and I met someone that I started it wasn't even a slow realization that I had emotional feelings. It was kind of one of those moments that you have in life that just kind of strikes you all of a sudden. Like it feels like a thunderbolt kind of like awareness. Like, oh my gosh, I like this person. Like, what is that about? It was a
Mm,
single moment that I can still remember. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if this is for me? It was
mhm.
just a very sudden realization. But it was
How,
what spurred me on
about how
to.
long into your marriage was this?
So when we separated, it was almost 13 years. So it was like 12 and 3/4 years that I realized it.
Okay. And that was when you had that moment with the person at work.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So that was a long time.
Yeah, and I'm not the kind of person to really hide my true feelings, so I knew that I wouldn't go through months or a year or pretending that it
Hmm.
was any different. So I immediately felt like I almost felt like I wasn't choosing it. I felt truly in the moment like this was choosing me
Okay.
and I had to follow it. I couldn't be dishonest
Hmm.
with my then husband. I just felt like it was choosing me and I had to, follow the life where I was being led. So,
How
yeah.
did that impact him? Like, what was his response to this?
That is such a good question. And I wasn't a life coach then, so I know a lot more about some of these things now than I knew then, but it certainly had him questioning himself and what did he do wrong? What could he have done better? That, he certainly felt like this happened because something was missing or something was done the wrong way or yeah, so and that played out, that showed itself. I think those feelings of insecurity showed itself in a lot of anger towards
Mm.
me because anger is easy to show, right?
Yeah,
Compared to
and anger is
vulnerability.
usually covering up grief from the
Yes.
loss and the sadness.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that you possibly felt guilty
Oh, the
during
divorce
that
was
period.
very difficult. Lots of blame, finger pointing. We had, youngish children. I mean, they were heading into their teenage years. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of not getting along, until the divorce was final.
Okay. And how did the kids respond to the change and the reason for, quote unquote, breaking up their family?
Yeah. Um, it was difficult for them, but I think honestly, and I've been in early childhood for years and years. That's my background. That's what my career has always been in. So honestly, I think a lot of their difficulty was in the fact that we didn't lay this out for them as a mutual team and a partnership.
Mm,
Um, they were told in a way that was not the ideal best way to tell them. There was a lot of drama, and it was kind of a traumatic event for them, um, being told. So, and that was a result of us just not having the ideal partnership because we just weren't in a place where we were communicating with each other in the best way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and a lot of times people will talk about divorce like, oh, you're that the trauma that people experience is because of the divorce. A lot of times it's like,
Mhm.
oh, don't divorce because your children are going to experience this. But like in my case, and
Mhm.
many cases, they were experiencing the worst kind of drama, like you put it, on a daily basis. It's
Yeah,
actually chronic. And the divorce was the best hope for
100%.
resolving and ending the
Yeah.
chronic chaos that they were experiencing.
Yeah, if you want to have happy children, first and foremost, they need to feel safe. And they can feel safe in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be married parents that make them feel safe. A lot of times, what your married situation is may, be leading to children feeling unsafe. So they just want to know what it means for them. What's the immediate, thing that's going to happen for them? What is my life going to look like? They just need to know. That's all they really at that moment care about.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned safety because as humans, that's all everyone is looking for. Everything we're
Mhm.
after
Yeah.
is safety and security.
Yeah.
And so then imagine like when children don't feel safe, like,
Yeah.
and I think that's really a key thing to think about. How can I get my children to safety, to feel safe, to create safety for
Mhm.
themselves? I love that you use that. So after the divorce, so you went
Mhm.
through the divorce, sounds like it was pretty dramatic, maybe even traumatic.
Yes.
Did you have to go through a healing process? How did you recover from all of that? What were you experiencing after you signed on the dotted line?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I guess the healing process was kind of a slow daily thing. I think of myself as generally a pretty positive person. Um, but it was hard going through. I was also at that time, um, I was kind of learning about having this new relationship. I was also in my first year teaching in the public schools. And so that was a learning curve in itself. I was getting observed all the time and going through the divorce. So um, my healing process very much looked like up and down turmoil for that time. And then the day after the divorce was final, there was actually a traumatic event in my then ex husband's family where he unfortunately lost his dad the day after our divorce. So um, we did move to a place immediately where we began communicating better and getting along better. But then we had logistics to figure out. Um, at the time, we were living in Florida. He wanted to move back to help his mom out. So um, after kind of a year of figuring this out, we ended up where I ended that relationship, moved back to our home state, and we kind of entered our happy divorce time, I guess, where we were connecting better. And since then, we've had periods of time that we got along and periods of time that we did not. Um, but that healing process was just kind of I guess, a long, slow, daily self care,
Mhm.
kind of really taking care of yourself and figuring out what you need to have the best outlook that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, self-care is huge. I know my journey, I there was a period where I realized that I had to create a body, and I know you're a weight loss coach. I had to create a body that could support me through
Mhm.
what I was going through. My divorce was definitely traumatic, stayed traumatic. When I'm in contact with my ex, even if it's through the courts, that's traumatic. As little contact as we have now, it's still very dramatic when he's around. Um, and so there was a moment where I realized, oh, my body needs to be able to support me through this. So I actually I became a network marketer for like I think it was Beachbody at that time.
Yeah.
And I started drinking smoothies every day. I would go for a walk or a run every day. I made sure I got sunshine. I drank a lot of water. It was like,
Mm.
and it wasn't for weight loss. It was just for my emotional health
Yes.
because it didn't help if my body was like hurting or achy or tired.
Yeah. Just that thought that you take care of yourself is just such a healing thought. And everyone responds in a different way, right? Some people
Mhm.
respond to stress by eating. At that point in time, I responded to stress by not eating.
Mm.
Um, and then years later, as I got into a very happy, solid, good relationship and was happy, then I responded by eating,
Not eating, yeah.
which led me to my weight loss journey.
All right, so let's talk about your. So you were in one relationship at the end of the divorce,
Hmm.
and you left that relationship so you could move back to your home
Yeah,
state with your ex-husband,
I did.
kind
I
of to keep
gave
the family together.
Yeah, I gave it up to logistically be physically where my children were. So, um, yeah, and it just was the conclusion of that relationship too. So I can
Yeah,
say I moved for the kids, so that we could all be physically sharing time together. But in honesty, it was the end of that relationship. But it just wasn't where I was meant to be right now.
yeah. Do you have any regrets about that relationship?
No, actually, she's, from what I know, very happily married right now. So yeah, no, we're all where we are supposed to be.
I love
And the
that.
funny thing is, when I moved back, I was like, okay, I need time to myself. I want to date and not be committed. And I've been in some kind of a committed relationship for the last million years, it felt like. And I want to just have a year to myself and date. And then
How
wouldn't you
old were
know,
you? Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. How old were you at this point?
So I was, let's see, I was 36, I believe, when I got divorced. So when I moved back, let's see, do a little calculation here. I guess I was around, I think it was between 37, 40, between that
Somewhere there.
age.
Yeah. So you were close to
Yeah.
40 and you were
Yeah.
like newly
Almost.
single,
Yeah.
no strings attached for the first time
Yeah. 39, I think.
I don't know, 15 plus, 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it didn't last. I thought it was going to be great. I was ready. I was like, I'm going to go out and meet people and just have a grand old time. And then, wouldn't you know, the very first night that I went out,
The very first
I,
night.
yes, I met someone. I'm like, no, come on. Because it's the second I met her, my now partner, I knew this is someone who's going to be important in my life for a long, long time. I just knew immediately.
What was it about her that like made you know? Like if you think back, I know maybe in that moment you couldn't have said, but
Yeah.
I think it was.
And it wasn't like I had this picture in my mind and she just checked off everything. Not at all. It just really truly was more of a feeling that when I met her and started talking to her, it was just this I don't know, it was just this internal, I guess like that other moment, that lightning bolt moment, like it just was
Mhm.
I just know. I had this knowing, I guess, inside that I just felt like I was supposed to meet this person and she was going to be important to me.
Yeah. You have knowings. And so I start to feel very nervous when my clients tell me that they just know, because in your case, you knew and what you've known has worked out both times or all three times,
Yeah.
maybe. Um, doesn't always work out for everyone. Like when they have that lightning bolt moment with someone that they meet, like what's the
Yeah.
difference?
Well, but what if it works out and it's not meant to be forever? So what if it works out for the period of time and it's what you need in that moment? So, um, yeah, I mean, I've had some longer relationships. 13 years is a long time, but you know, there were some people that had looked at my marriage and thought it didn't work out because it ended. But what if it was exactly what I needed for that period of time? So maybe there are other people that are supposed to come into your life for a few months
Mm,
or a year, and it's exactly where you're supposed to go, even if you're not meant to be with that person, for
yeah.
longer. And I did try to fight it for a year. We decided at first to see each other and to be able to see other people and we tried that out and it just
You
it
kept
didn't
seeing
work
each other
out.
instead of seeing
Yeah,
other
oh
people.
yeah. Kept getting matched with each other online and coming back to and so that only lasted a few months and we're like, all right, let's just stop resisting this.
Right. So it sounds like the way you approach relationships is that it always works out, basically.
Y- Yeah, what if it does? Or at least
It always works out
asking.
whether you're together or whether the relationship ends. For you, your belief, the thought that I'm hearing is that it just always works out.
Yeah, I guess it feels good to listen to your internal, not the urges, but like you said, your knowing
Intuition,
and
yeah.
yeah, where are
And
you and just follow where you're led to, I guess, is my personal belief. And that may not feel comfortable or feel like the right thing for everyone else, but I feel like that's right for me.
yeah, I teach my clients to listen to their intuition, and not just in the area of relationships, um, just in life in general. I think a lot of times we come out of these longer relationships, some of us abusive relationships or really difficult childhoods where we were taught not to be in touch with who we are,
Mm.
not to be in touch with what is happening inside of ourselves. So we have this really strong outward focus. And many times, and this does not sound like you, but many times women get divorced and they're not in touch with what they want or who they are or who they were meant to be, or what they like in the world or what's for them. You sound like somehow you retained that
Mm.
throughout your relationships, and that way you didn't have to like try 100 things to figure out what you wanted. You were like,
Yeah.
no, this is what I like, and you were in touch with that part of yourself that message to you what you liked, and what that part of you always told you was just kind of like, for the most part, the right thing.
Yeah. And what if I really wanted to date and be single for a while because what I really wanted was a strong connection with myself. And maybe I didn't necessarily need to not have a partner in order to do that. I just really needed
Mhm.
that strong connection with myself instead of, looking to someone else to fulfill things for me.
Yeah.
So,
So actually, that brings me to your current relationship, the
mhm,
relationship you're in. You've been together 13 years. Um, have you had to deal with, blending a family or
mhm.
conflict with like exes or just all of those blending family type situations?
Yeah, so interesting. So I have 3 kids. She did not have children, but she was married before. Um, right now, we're still very friendly with our ex-husbands.
Oh,
One,
come on.
right. So one of them has a daughter that's friends with my daughter, and they, he we take our cars to he has his own garage
I
and
love
he lives in
that.
the same town. You're not going to believe this, but my ex-husband and my son work for my partner's company. We
Y'all
and we've
are just
gone
one
through
big happy family now.
yeah, we've gone through our ups and downs, but
Mhm.
when my daughter moved out to her own apartment, we all helped move together.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's good.
You'll have to tell us at least one down so that we don't hate you.
One what
One
downside?
down situation, one situation you had to navigate that was difficult. Because this is a 13-year journey. Like you said,
Yeah,
it's not been all roses. And I think sometimes a lot of us are hesitant to move into the next stage of relationship because a lot of people present like this super rosy picture.
yeah,
And
yeah,
everyone's like, I don't know. I don't believe that. Like, are you not human? And
yeah.
then some other people present like this really terrible picture. And I think it's a balance of like the work of rebuilding or
Mhm.
remarriage or repartnering is more like it's work, but it's like very productive work. It's not like
Yes.
a hostage situation.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I
what kind of
guess
productive work have you had
oh
to
gosh, there's been a lot of it. So maybe I can see how it may not be helpful to be vague about some of there's been ups and downs. We obviously my ex and I have, lived in different households. We ended up deciding for our children to finish high school at his hometown high school. So, they spent time at both our addresses, but we've had some issues. And thank goodness this is back quite a few years now, with one of my children's mental health. We, I mean, we've had situations, we've had times where we've had arguing where I've gotten to the point that I blocked him from my phone.
mm,
Um, we're not Facebook friends anymore.
setting
Blocked him
boundaries?
from my
Yeah.
yeah, definitely set some boundaries. We've had times where um that my youngest moved in with me and stopped communicating with dad. That was very difficult. We're in a better place right now. But we've had times where, I set up um, my daughter with counseling and different therapists that weren't working out. She had a hard time connecting with therapists. And then my partner and I have had spent a couple years in counseling ourselves because there's always,
Yeah,
we have our blind spots. There's just things that you need help with. But
absolutely.
you just,
100%. Like I was actually just on a hunt for therapists for my kids again this week. Like, because one that they have is like, it's not working out. So that journey to find like the appropriate mental health resource for your kids can just totally resonate with that.
it's huge. And mental health is just such a huge issue. And it's something that a lot of people hesitate to even talk, if they've been in therapy, it's something that people don't want to share. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, if we all
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
therapist and a coach.
Yes. Yes. And the right ones. Because sometimes
Yes.
that's a journey too. And I think
Hmm.
people sometimes give up too easily. And I've given up easily myself in the past, like way back. I mean, um, I had a therapist and it just, at a certain point, what was interesting was at a certain point, she just wanted to know everything about my kids. And I was like, but literally we would come into the office and the kids had their therapist in another room and she was my therapist
Hmm.
and all of her questions were about the kids and there was nothing about me and it was just like what is happening here.
It is so important to find a right fit. I
So
can remember being in counseling with my daughter with a certain therapist. She really wanted her to take Pilates and teach Pilates. But week after week, all she would talk about was Pilates. And finally, we're like, we have got to go find someone
find
else. Like,
someone else.
this
Yeah.
lady's obsessed with
Yeah,
Pilates.
100%. So thanks for sharing just that part of the journey because I know it gets really real for everyone. A lot of my clients who have met their partner and I'm coaching them through the relationship, there's a lot that goes into like the logistics, selling homes, buying a new home or building a new home, parenting styles, all of that comes up. So just want to acknowledge you and thank you for, sharing just kind of like what the behind the scenes is. um so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit. You had mentioned to me earlier about your partner and kind of like what she
Mhm.
faced coming into
Yes.
the relationship and some of the things that her relatives had said about the relationship.
Yeah. Um, she had kind of a different experience. She married young and got divorced. And she didn't get divorced because she came out of the closet or anything like that. She got divorced and actually still dated men for a while, like just trying to hide herself. Um, she got divorced because hers was more of an infidelity situation that
Mm,
she found herself to be in. Um, with her husband, just found out, yeah, that there was infidelity there and left, and they're still good friends. Um, but she had shared that her hope at one point was that maybe someday in the future, once all of her relatives, every one of them had passed on and she was the last one living, that she would come out.
oh
And she
wow.
really truly thought that she didn't have that trust that anyone in the family would be able to handle it. So then she started having relationships with women, but she hid them and pretended she was friends. She actually was in a situation where she owned a house with her partner, and and everyone still believed that they were
Wow.
just friends. So,
I can imagine that must put a lot of just I don't want to, the hypervigilance of that will
mhm,
put a lot of stress on
yes,
your body and on your
yeah,
mind. You're using
and
so much
shame.
energy, right? Because of the shame, that's
Mhm,
imposed on, making your own life choices and,
yeah,
living the life that is authentically you. I can just imagine how much energy had to go into that. It's like a
yes,
tax on being yourself.
yeah. And if you're hiding the real you, what does it mean? Like, what do you think about the real you? It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a job to hide it. So, she finally was actually outed by a a an angry ex-girlfriend that outed her to her family, and, of course, it's one of those things that you think is a terrible thing that happens and turns out to be the
Mhm.
the biggest blessing ever.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with her. So, when she was out, she cut her hair shorter and said, I'm just going to be me, and breathed a big sigh of relief, I guess.
And why
So,
was she single when you met?
so she was single. So she just was dating. Like I said, she was married young. So
Mm,
she never had all of that dating time. Like she had been with her husband since she was very young. So, she got her single time to date lots of people then, and told me when we met that she wasn't looking for a commitment, but I could totally tell that she was lying. Like I knew she did. Like, stop it. You were lying to yourself. And she was just trying to match what I was saying,
mhm.
and yeah, after our first kind of bumpy, rocky year, then we've been completely committed once we got through that first year.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. This is the first, I'm going to try to say it correctly, non-heterosexual
Yeah.
story that I think I'm
Yes.
recording for the
Good.
podcast. So I want to just
So
really
fun to be a
appreciate you for
first.
being willing to, come on and tell your story, because I think all of our stories matter. I think every single divorce story matters. Every single journey matters. And so I appreciate you letting me be the witness to,
Oh,
to you telling your story.
thanks so much. It's so fun. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. All right. Please tell the listeners where they can find you online if they want to, contact you. I know some people who resonate with your story might want to like tell you theirs or just connect with you. And then
Oh,
there will be some who want to hire you to help with their weight loss,
yeah,
because
sure.
divorce can be a stressful journey. Like you said, a lot of emotional eating can happen. And so for anyone who wants to work with you or wants to connect with you, just kind of tell us again who you help, what you do, and then where we can find you on the internet.
Sure. So you can find me a few different places. At the Life Coach School coaches. That's where I certified. So you can find me there. KateBixler.com. Bixler is Bixler. And then I also have a website, I Lose Weight with Kate. You can find me
Awesome.
there. And I will work with people who want to lose weight, or coaching on lots of different things, anything.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
work
Because I
with
mean, it's all the same. The coaching is a lot of it is the same principles. It's how we think about ourselves and how we think about the world and what's going on in our brains. Like literally, it's
yeah,
all
it is.
what's going on in our brains. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate you coming on. Listeners, thank you so much for spending time with Kate and myself today. We appreciate your time and attention, and we will see you next time.